It is a bit of a repeat, but we're doing things in the model number order now, so I thought we should look at this one again. The National NV-G20 VCR, and also at the same time the National NV-G21, since they're quite similar. So this is probably where the G series of VCRs should have started, because this one is actually using the G mechanism, which is quite different to the ones we've looked at previously. It's a lot more compact, less motors and things, more reliable because it doesn't have slipping belts. It says, here they don't give you the advancements in the service manual anymore, but what we do have is the training manual, which covers the G20, G21, G200 and H65. So maybe that will tell us about the good things that are in these models. We also want to have a look, what is the difference between G20 and G21? And we've got a couple of them here to poke around with. Have a look at this. Through the many new innovative technologies have been developed to attain such a remarkable mechanism and circuits, the NV-G20, G21, 200 and H65, of which employed newly G mechanism offer the following major features and advantages. Wow, that's a mouthful. It's been translated from Japanese, so the word order is a bit suspect. So it's got a direct drive head cylinder with oil film suspension system. Replacing conventional ball bearings, the pressure of an oil film eliminates contact between the shaft and rotor of the cylinder. When the cylinder turns, oil flows in specially processed grooves in the thrust plate and shaft, concentrating in the center and creating pressure to float the rotating cylinder for a complete non-contact rotational accuracy remains unchanged at 99.999%. So we've got one here. It was one that we took apart in a previous video, but so it's crashed and this one has already been damaged. But yes, that stuff was unscrewed in that. I must have put it back together. Yeah. So there's a special pattern in this, on this plate here, a kind of spiral pattern which causes the oil to flow and push and reduce the friction, and similarly on the shaft there are grooves, as it explains. Yeah, so the conventional ones, there's ball bearings at the top and the bottom, and in this one there's a sleeve and a shaft and an oil film surface, and because of that, yeah, everything's made much thinner. A bad explanation. So we saw that in the NV-180 VCR video where we looked at the heads and we looked at the problems that they now have because the oil is kind of drying out and it makes them not work anymore because they will start vibrating. So we looked at re-lubricating that. Okay, so I removed the circlip from around there and we can pull this out. Don't worry, this one is already ruined, so we're not ruining it anymore. Yeah, so down there on the shaft where we can't see it, will be some grooves. You can see the motor, the coils for that, the magnet which follows the magnetic field, and then the RF transformer part is now in this form rather than the flat ones with the windings in a ring. It's now around there and around the inside of there. More compact. Okay, so there's a great new head. High rotational accuracy, quiet and no bearing noise. Durability and no friction. Less vibration, more stable picture, thinner and lighter. Ah, look at that. So it went from 99 millimeters thick to 82. Not too bad. Has a lap time indicator. Oh, because it will half load and use the control head to read the control pulses on the tape, so it can get a better idea of where you are when rewinding and fast forwarding. instead of just using the rotation of the reels, which changes speed depending on the length of the tape. Double superfine slow. Newly developed digital servo circuit allows the Super 4-head system to deliver slow motion reproduction at twice the density of the previous superfine slow for more natural. Twice the number of tracks are played compared to before. When using the 3-head model, now it's 4, so it can read all the tracks. Digital scanner for programming the VCR. The G mechanism. I think half of that was off screen. Yeah, this, because I wasn't looking at that. G mechanism. Attractively slim in appearance by innovated compact mechanism. The capstan motor of the G mechanism works as a loading motor and the front loading motor, which is what pulls the tape in. And the capstan motor controls all mechanical components of the VCR. Here's the explanation of that. Capstan motor, toothed belt, so it's not going to slip. And then there are various drives taken off of that, and I think there's a solenoid somewhere in there which switches that capstan motor on to driving the loading mechanisms. Here's an explanation of that. Capstan motor, a timing belt, and then there's all sorts of things. So that drives the reels with those. Play and rewind, fast forward, different speeds there. Intermediate gear. Then there's this clutch disc to engage it to run this other stuff. There's a planetary gear, and then that goes to the loading posts. And then there's this thing, a sub-cam gear, mode selector switch to brakes, and then a connection gear which goes to the front loading mechanism. That's all explained there. Explained for quite a long period of time because it's complicated and you need to know about this in order to get it up and running. If you take any of these gears off or they become out of sync for some reason. So it engages on the inside of this one. Shows how you can get it through all the different modes. And then we look at the circuits, how those work. Timing diagrams. Everything you could want to know about the VCRs. Now let's have a little look at the G21 service manual and see what does it tell us about what is different here. There we go. A comparison chart. I guess it depends on what model you have. G21A, EA or EN. So it describes the different parts from the G20 to the new model G21. Maybe the G20 had some issues, so 21 was introduced. So mechanical parts, different panels, holders, different operating instructions, packing case, a buzzer pack. It makes a noise, I guess. The operation and the timer board have changed. On the main board, inductor, some resistors, some shielding of some sort. A whole bunch of other bits have changed. Microcontrollers on the timer board again. Because the boards are quite different on the front. Okay, so it's a revised one, and this will go through the new circuits because the front panel board's different, so that will be explained here, whereas the main board is probably not in here because it'll be the same board as the other one with just a few different parts fitted. Oh no, look at that, they do have the main board. I guess it did change a bit then. It probably just told us that it had changed in that list, didn't it? Not sure. Right, let's look at these things, physically look at them, front and back, then we'll take them apart, try them out. So here they are, stacked on top of each other. The G20, G21, you can see the front panel is quite different. G20, well, both of them got power and eject buttons there. The remote control receivers are in different positions. Then there's a door here which reveals. So you've gone from those like buttons for tracking back to knobs. Then there's the tuner and timer controls, tape transport controls there, and the other buttons just like on the earlier Model G series that we saw. Now on the, I also think there's no HQ. No, we do have HQ in both of those. Yeah, simple door, whereas the G21, it's a door that has controls on it, so it's much more exciting. So the screen takes up a lot more area in there than that one, I think, or is it just, maybe it's, we'll find out when we turn it on. Assuming these turn on, that's the thing you got to watch with these. From this model onwards, they're using switch mode power supplies, so now in their old age there's a lot of problems and you can blow it up very easily. So again, tracking controls, tuner and timer controls. Weird they use little round buttons instead of these nice square ones of this model. And then quite nice feeling buttons that are attached to the door. Now on the back of these, similar sort of deal to what we've seen before. Now though, removable power cord, exciting. RCA, video and audio inputs and outputs, the color test switch, the RF ins and outs, and that's it. Alright, so let's get this apart. I think the two we just looked at are the two that are probably ready to be scrapped, and I didn't do up many of the screws from last time we looked at them. Yeah, it doesn't have screws on the front. And it doesn't have a bottom cover fitted either. Oh, it's also lost its the circlip holding that together. Ah, yeah, I think that's the one where it got a bit, there was a problem with it, and so this piece got replaced with the one from another machine, and this is the bad one, I think. Maybe go look at the other video and find out what happened. But this one might have a good power supply in it because it looks like it's been taken apart. And I remember replacing capacitors in them at some point. Yeah, that's the thing. Switch mode power supplies, they'll probably explode when you turn them on. And so it might be a good idea to replace the capacitors before you turn them on if they haven't been touched for a long period of time. So the mechanism looks a bit cleaner and simpler, and overall the machine is thinner, but it's the same width as the previous non-G mechanism models. And as before, the same procedure applies when you want to get access to this. You got to take the front off first, and then take the front panel board off, and then everything can lift out. Quite a lot of stuff on the front there. Pretty similar to what we saw in the G12 and G16. The cable that's hooked on, the join between those, this ribbon here, so that lifts up out of the way. And I think the screws at the back are still removed, they haven't been re-added. That grounding wire there needs to come off. Then in theory this lifts up. Now you got to remember it's lifting the power supply up as well. Some wires need to be unclipped. And does it sit anywhere? Not sure. Not as nice as the other one where it was hinged, unless the hinges have gone. Don't know, some stuff has gone from this, I think. Yeah, because it's missing the metal that holds the cover on. Yeah, it is a double-sided board. I think it might not be, it's not through-hole plated, it's just relying on things being soldered on the top side and the bottom side, like links. Ah, yeah, they're using wire links to create the top to bottom connections. Interesting. So it would allow higher density because they don't need so much board area to fit all the tracks in. And you can see here, as we discussed before for the earlier models, this cable is being ruined, and recreated this stiffener thing out of tape in order to reconnect that. And that other end's probably wrecked as well, it's all bent on an angle. Now the next part is, you can't just take the tape loading mechanism out and put it back in, because as we discussed, everything's driven off the capstan motor, which is in there. Different mechanism here where the pinch roller drops down behind the tape and pushes it in rather than coming in from the back with the capstan. Capstan doesn't poke up through there anymore and go behind the tape. It's now the pinch roller drops down behind the tape once it's been extended and pushes it against the pinch roller, which also means the next problem is another thing you need to watch out for, which I mentioned in other videos, but this time it's actually true, is that arm there, which is what pulls the tape out and brings it up so that the pinch roller can go behind it. That has lost its good lubrication and it's now very slow to return, so it's likely it will catch on the tape and yoink it out and damage it. So that's something you need to be aware of if you have one of these machines and you want to get it working. That will need to be removed, the shaft clean, some lubrication, and then put back at the right height. The other problem that's going to happen is, as discussed, the heads the lubrication will go bad, and so they won't spin nicely, they'll vibrate. Sometimes you can tell by wobbling it a bit, but it's not easy. Sometimes it won't show up right away, it will run for a while, then start vibrating. You always hear this noise and the picture will go bad. Hopefully you got a power cable. Okay, we're going to try turning this on and see what happens. Hopefully it's one that I've done the capacitors on, the power supply, but I don't know. It came on. So let's see. Yeah, but there's a circuit missing down below, which is going to cause big problems. There you go, you can see it pulled the tape out using that arm that's gone stiff and this other one. So now the pinch roller can drop down in front of it. Can we go fast forward? Shouldn't be any problems with the slipping, because there's nothing to slip anymore. It doesn't have that idler tire thing. It's just all good stuff. Similarly, rewind should just work. It's quite nice and gentle with the tape. Put it into play mode. Everything's great, though I can hear it destroying the tape a little bit. And I didn't join up the video output because I wasn't expecting this thing to work. Find out where the plug is. Let's see. Look at that. It works. Oops. It worked. Oh. Has this got some intermittent problem? Sounds a little bit grumpy about something, doesn't it? Well, it could be that whatever that pulley's called at the bottom, which has fallen off because it doesn't have its circlip on it anymore. But in general, you can see it works. And yeah, the new mechanism is quite slow and quiet to operate, but you're not going to have problems with things slipping. Yeah, maybe it's having trouble sensing something. So it stays in that half-loaded state all of the time. I wonder if did we decide last time that this might have static damage and it's just doing random things? well, there's something wrong with a sensor somewhere, so it keeps thinking it's not in the right state. You can see the mode switch is down there. You can see it turning around, the white wheel there. Yeah, something might be a bit upset with that. Oh, it made it. That thing did return back fast enough. Maybe it's driven back. In some machines it's not driven back, and yeah, you've got to be very careful. Okay, we'll look at a few other things related to this mechanism. Just unplug the power to it. Now, what you can do, if you want to manually drive it, you can do that by turning the wheel on the bottom. So I'm going to put my fingers in this and turn it around, and then when you need the mechanism to operate, push on this lever here and it will re-engage the clutch in there. And with that, what we can do is feed the tape in and get it through all the different modes. So we start turning, draws the tape in, threads it up to the half load position, and now it's in a fast forward state. So we push that little lever, and now it's in a doing nothing state. Push it again. Now it's rewind state. Push it again. Now it's different type of rewind. Oh, am I going the wrong way? Probably. Alright. There we go. Fast forward state. An idle state. Now we're entering the play state. Oh no, the tape missed that shaft. I guess it didn't return. Yeah, now we're fully into the play state. And that's the end of that. So that's play mode. Now, if we run again, back the other way, back out of play mode, unthreading, rewinding to pull the tape in, then unthreading, and then ejecting the tape. So you can fully manually operate the mechanism with quite a bit of ease to check that everything is working properly. Just got to watch that shaft. And let's take the mechanism out more so we can study it a bit better. There's screws at the front, and there's one at the back here, and then that should lift out. The whole thing will lift out, except that that wire is caught by something. Oh, it might be that ground wire. And then these wires under a clip. Plastic chassis thing can go away. Now it's all out. Now, because the power supplies in these will probably be dead and you'll need to work on them before you can get the machine to run. To do that, you've got to get, I think it's these 3 screws need to be removed. Maybe it's 2 screws. 2 screws need to be removed, which hold the power supply cage onto the back of the board. And then there's a horrible ribbon cable thing, which is really annoying because it's using a stiff, like a really stiff cord wire thing. This is all the way inside out right now. Put it down like that. So it's a like tinned. This cable is made of like multi-strand copper wire that's been tinned, and then that's just pushed into this connector. And you see what's happened there. You've got all these just loose ends that have to make their way into a fairly grabby socket. So to get that back in, you've got to carefully ease all the pins in the right place without any of them bending or going in the wrong way, and push them really gently so that they go in without squishing out of the way, which is what they really want to do. It's horrible. So don't undo that if you don't have to, but you will have to, because the capacitors in the power supply will be wrecked and you'll have to get it out and take it apart and replace them all. This is one I prepared earlier. Yeah, I remember dodging all those caps in there. So it's not just those ones, it's also soldered shut, so you got to pick all that out. And then there's all kinds of layers of double insulation. So as well as all this secondary electrolytics, you have to replace the tiny ones on the primary as well. That's very critical, because if you don't do that, that's what's going to cause it to explode. It will blow the drive transistor that's in there or something else related to it. Yeah, so there's two electrolytics down there that must be replaced, and all the output electrolytics, and then all these insulators need to go back in how they were so they can continue to do their job and not cause it to short out. You definitely do not want to have this thing open while it's running. So high voltages, very dangerous. So you have to put all this stuff back together. Make sure it's all folded and engaged properly. Put the cover back on. And then it'll be good to go, in theory, if you've replaced the caps right and you got them around the right way. And you'll find that these are somewhat standardized, so it will work on several different models. It's definitely going to work on the G21 and probably a couple of other models, I can't remember exactly. But then there are some versions of this that are different. They have more pins, so then yeah, you've got to watch out for that. Now if we take a look at this mechanism, I guess we don't really need to look at the G21 today because it's the same other than the front panel business. Yeah, so this one does have some kind of fault. So here's the main board. You see it is a bit more simplified. It doesn't have so many of these circuit packs on it. There's just one here, servo, extra servo stuff here with motor driver, system control there, microcontroller, power supply business there, and then the luminance chrominance processing board there, and then much more simplified TV tuner there, less bits and pieces. Looks like there was provision for another metal case thing containing stuff, but it's not there. Maybe there's a different version which I guess connects into that. Now there's some very important things you need to be aware of if you're going to take the mechanism apart. Because there's no motor on this front loading mechanism, it gets its drive through that gear there onto that little black colored one that you can see in there onto a rack. Because of that, if you take this off, it's ruined unless you follow some very specific instructions on putting it back. We'll demonstrate. So 2 screws, and these are smaller screws for some reason, so you need to use the number 1 JIS Yeah, a lot of this mechanism uses the number 1 size. So you take out 2 screws, then you should just lift off. Is that right? Or are there more screws? No, there's more screws. So you have to advance the mechanism and then it will uncover additional screws. Maybe that's as a precaution to prevent you from just willy-nilly unscrewing this without knowing what's going on. Okay, so it comes off and then it just flops about, and you can see now that gear and that rack there are now out of position, and so it's not going to be able to just go back on there because you need to get that in the exact same the exact position that needs to be in on there. Otherwise it will never work again. Because if we turn this, that's rotating now and it's going to be in some other position. So I believe you do that, you take it all the way back to the back and then you turn it like 1 or 2, and then you get this and you do something like line it up. Yeah, I know what's going on now. So you put see, there's a slot there where that shaft goes through, and you put the second tooth in line with it, and then on this you wind it. Pretty sure that's all you have to do. Let's confirm that by looking in the service manual. It has quite a big section on getting everything lined up properly. It's the adjustment procedure, assembly and adjustment procedure mechanism, probably 212. Yeah, so there's a whole section in the service manual which goes through getting all of the gears lined up. Done it a long time ago, pulled them all off and put them all back together following this, the final bit. There's a hole in the chassis that lines up with that when you're putting it together. Connection gear. She put that hole lining up to that hole. Oh no, look, I did it wrong. It's the second one. Yeah, so ignore what I said before. Follow what it says in the manual. Reinstallation of the cassette compartment. The position of the mechanism is necessary for correct working. Press the change lever and turn the capstan motor counterclockwise until it's placed into eject position fully until the mechanism comes to the final position, so everything stops moving. Keep it there. Then memorize the position of marking hole on the connection gear, which is there. Was it that? The marking or hole, and then turn the capstan motor counterclockwise so that the marking or hole return just for 1 rotation back. Okay, so I didn't do that bit. And then slide the cassette holder just a little so that the second tip of the rack A comes to the center of the hole. Okay, so I did have that right at least. Okay, so turn the mechanism all the way to the end, that way, so it stops. Then you turn it again the other way so that it's 1 rotation around, which is there. Then you adjust this so that the second tooth is in line with the slot. Now what they say to do is remove the top plate. I don't think I ever did this. Let's try it. Now presumably that screw there would already be gone because you've taken it out. So it says take these 2 off, but then you got all this wiring to deal with. Oh, we can unplug that at least. You get that out of the way, which goes to the supply reel end sensor. So you take this off. It's interesting that it's not red screws. So now this whole thing becomes really flimsy, but it means at least you can look in there and see what's going on now. So we've taken that off, and then it says install slowly the cassette compartment to the chassis so the second tip of the rack comes into the 5th slot of the connection gear as shown in a figure. 5th slot as in the one that's just above the hole. So that tooth there goes into that hole there, and then reinstall the top plate. So let's see. Now I worked out what's going on here. What you got to do is the shaft that's at the bottom of this needs to be put down in that slot there. Oh, yeah, don't hold it like that because this thing will just fall out. So once you get that shaft down in there, then it will just tip back and fall into position. But now it's all munted and fallen apart, isn't it? Okay, so what a mess. Did I ruin this? A little bit. Okay, I think that's done. I think that's in position. And then it says reinstall the top plate. And then it says if the mechanism doesn't work, carefully repeat all of that stuff. Yeah, if it doesn't work, try again and hope harder this time. So let's see, did that actually go into the right place? Looks like it did. Okay, I'm just going to get these two in. We'll try turning this thing on again and just check that it works, just to prove a final point. Yeah, I don't think we need to have a look at the G21 because it's pretty much the same thing. Those are the wrong screws. There are 2 screws that are longer than the others, and the longer ones go at this end. But we need to wind the mechanism on a bit to access those. So we'll put these ones in first just to get something secured. Then we'll get this back on. Hold this all back together. And we've got this wiring. Oh, it's supposed to hook under there. Anyway, it's doing something. Now we've got to wind this on a bit. And then we should be able to put in the final screws. Yeah, most of the time you won't need to deal with taking all this stuff off because it's fine. Unless there's a problem with one of those gears and you need to replace it, then you're going to have to deal with taking the whole thing apart. That's when it gets exciting. But it's not impossible. You just have to read the manual and look at it very carefully for a long period of time and work out what do they want, what do you need to do, which things get lined up with what things. Probably the most annoying part, once you've got the mechanism under control, is getting these stupid connectors back in. Because after a few goes, the wires will just bend out of the way and not go back into the positions they need to be in. And yeah, that's rage quitting territory there. Okay, we'll screw this back on and I'll plug the bits back together and then we'll try it out just to see that prove something. Can we just plug it into this? Do we need to put it in the chassis? Like the housing? We probably do because that pulley is too low down and it won't turn if it's squashed into the bench. Is it going to be hard to plug some things in? Probably. Let's see. Got the cable down onto the mechanism. Interesting that changed back to a discrete wired when it was a flexible ribbon cable thing in the G12 and 16. Oh, we got this one. Goes under there. See, that's an interesting double row connector. Goes onto the capstan motor. put that one down there, which was hard to reach. Well, it was hard to pull out because it was twisted around this metalwork. It's back in, but we've got to get it out of the way of the stuff. There we go. Now we've got quite a number of ways, one on this side, and then a less number of ways, one on this side. And then finally, one of the other really bad ones, also turning into a mess, is going to that loading mechanism. Right, well, let's reduce this up and we'll see if it still mostly sort of works. Sort of worked before. Let's see whether it made it any better or worse. Yeah, we might have ruined it. Definitely ruined something. Is that thing... the problem is that's fallen apart. Hopefully that's the only problem. Is that the gear has fallen apart. The one that was missing a circlip, and I did nothing about it. I'll just pop that back down to get it out of the way so we can turn this up. Yeah, see, that's all fallen off. And a spring has fallen out from under there. It's not going to be easy to put back, is it? Oh, not too bad. Okay. Hopefully that was the only issue there. Yeah, it's a pressure, like a press fit into there with like a hex shaft, plastic hex shaft thing. Okay. Yeah, because it wasn't in its fully ejected position, it was seeing if it could load a tape. Somewhat promising. Into fast forward mode. Nice bright VFD on this. Oh, look at that. Well, there you go. Some success. Double cheeseburger. Just what we need after a successful VCR assembly and disassembly. Let's check out the pores on this. Pretty good. Well, it's good on my screen. Again, it's the sync problem that we see on... The sync problem we see. Beautiful clear picture. I think there was a slow motion button on this again. Oh, there you go, that time it was fine. Yeah, so because the G21 is very similar, and because we've already looked at them at a previous video, we're going to skip over that, and next time we'll go to, I think it's the G25 is the next one that I've got. And I think I've got a bunch of those, and I don't know what condition they're in, so we'll find out, and we'll see if we can get any of them to go. So that's something to look forward to next time. And hopefully that was a good, exciting look at the G20. This is probably one of the pinnacles of the older National Panasonic VCRs. Nice mechanism that is fairly reliable, fairly compact. Still works after all this time, and it seems to work better now because whatever was upsetting it to start with has stopped doing that, and now it's playing fine without giving any trouble. Good ads from long ago. Just the review will work as well. Pretty good picture. We didn't even have to turn the tracking, they're all in the center fix position. So that's pretty nice. Great, let's look at the National NV-G20 VHS VCR. Inside it, some things to watch out for, power supply especially, and some parts of the mechanism, and how to get the timing sorted out when you're reassembling it. Very important things that you need to be aware of if you're going to work on one of these. Stay tuned for next time. Take a look at another VCR and discover more exciting things perhaps.